much more teaching that really needs to be taught concerning the ORIT and the Torah. And that's the central part of our covenant life, is the ORIT and the keeping of the senbet. As we had did another teaching on the importance of the senbet, that the Sabbath and the keeping of the Sabbath is a very important sign for us, especially as the Beit Israel, and especially for those strangers who are not Beit Israel, in other words, the Gentiles and others who turn to the King of Kings in Christ. The keeping of the senbet, the keeping of the Sabbath is all connected with the Beit Israel's lost identity. And that's another teaching right there. But the senbet and the Sabbath, there are certain readings from the Torah, from the prophets, and from the Hadith Kidan, or the Brit Hadasha, the New Covenant. And this is what we're teaching here, and this is what we want to engage at this time, since we're in the 47th out of 54 Sabbath in the year, as we're approaching a new year, and as we are in a very prophetical time where the scriptures remind us to redeem the time because the days are evil. And the keeping of the senbet, which we say as the Sabbath within the Amharic and the Ethiopic, the keeping of the Shabbat or the senbet is very, very important, especially for us as once lost but now found Beit Israel, and especially for the elect rastafari. So the teaching on the what's known as the weekly Torah readings, or the weekly of the ORIT on the senbet, is very, very important. There's a lot of history, Hebrew history, that connects with it, and a lot of practices that through the losing of our identity. Because the first thing we have to recognize that Exodus 31 verses 12 to 17 is where Elohim instructed Moses that his Sabbaths were to be a sign between him and the Beit Israel forever, and the covenant people forever. Just as the Ethiopian Hebrew people also kept the senbet, and their history of keeping the Sabbath and keeping their Hebrew and Hebraic identity was very important for them. And when they turned their backs on the senbet, you understand, it's the same thing that happened basically with the Beit Israel. Because what is the senbet? It's a sign. And a sign is something that does what? It identifies. The Sabbath or the senbet is a perpetual reminder, metasebbia, of who Elohim, of who the true God and King of Kings is, and who his people are. And as long as the Beit Israel kept the senbet, our people kept their identity. So it's very important for us to understand that in returning into the covenant, in accepting the grace of Getachin Jesus Christos, and there is a growth that we have to go through. We have to grow. And the law, as it is said in the gospel, is our pedagogue, or mogzit is our nanny. The law is our schoolmaster. And this is why it's very important for us to keep the senbet or the Sabbath qidus. In order to keep the senbet and the Sabbath qidus, these weekly or sabbatical Torah readings or orit readings are very, very important. So let's try to get right into at least this part, the first bait of this particular reading for this particular senbet that we are currently entering in. And it's the 47th, which is known as rreh, or Bamarinya Inehu, which means to behold, rreh, like a raiy, which is the name, the Ethiopic name of revelation, which is the vision. Rreh in the Hebrew, which is this particular portion, parashot or parashat, singular, parashot plural, in the Hebrew. This particular Sabbath, the Torah reading is Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 26, to Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 17. The Haftorah, or the prophetical Nabiyat, the Nabim, prophetical reading, is Isaiah 54, chapter 54, verses 11 to chapter 55, verse 5. And the Hadith Kidan, or the Brit Hadasha reading, which is the New Covenant reading, is John chapter 7, verse 37 to verse 52, and 1 John chapter 4, verses 1 to verse 6. So this is what we read and study on the senbet. Well, this is what is recited. The study actually takes place in the Timharit, the ORIT Timharit, or in the Hebrew, the Talmud Torah. And Talmud basically means learning or teaching. Our Talmud is based on the teaching of His Imperial Majesty. So let's get right into this. In this portion of the reading, we're going to deal with the last part of chapter 11, which actually, if you were to look at the script, the Metaf Keddus, the Book of the Seven Seals of Haile Selassie, you will see that it's arranged in what we call bait. So instead of saying parasha, which means portion in Hebrew, we say bait or beitoch, because the reading, as you can see from Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 26 to chapter 16, verse 17, it covers many mi'raf or mi'rafoch, many chapters. But what we're going to try to focus on in the time that we have here is this portion, this particular bait, from verse 26 of Deuteronomy chapter 11 to verse 32. And we found this to be very interesting, especially since we're seeking to initiate this now. Actually, it began on the 46th Sabbath, which was July 23rd, the Son of Man Day, Haile Selassie the First Earth Day. And that's a very important reading. So as we put the chart up there, one can read over that and see the mystical, metaphysical, and the scriptural, spiritual connection to that. So it begins off, Besem Ab, Wawole, Wamemphis Qedus, Ahadu, Amlak. It begins, behold, rreh, rreh, raiy, the vision. I set before you this day a blessing, barakat, and a curse, margam or margum. The blessing, if all of you shall hearken, shall hear, shall listen, shall feel. Like, do you feel this? The commandment of Yahweh, your Elohim, of Exyavi, Lotus Subhat, your Amlak, your source sent, which I command you this day. And the curse, if ye shall not hearken, if ye shall not hear, if ye shall not obey, if ye shall not feel, in other words, receive this with your soul. That's what we mean. You feel me? Do you feel Yahweh's commandment? If you shall not hearken to the commandment of Yahweh, your Elohim, but turn aside out of the way which I command you this day, to go after other gods which ye have not known. And it shall come to pass, when Yahweh your Elohim shall bring thee into the land, into the promised land, whither thou goest to possess it, that thou shalt set the blessing, the barakat, upon Mount Gerizim, and the curse upon Mount Ebal. Are they not beyond the Jordan, behind the way of the going down of the sun, in the land of the Canaanites that dwell in the Arabah, over against Gilgal, beside the terebinths of Moreh? For ye are to pass over the Jordan, to go in to possess the land which Yahweh your Elohim giveth you, and ye shall possess it, and dwell therein. And ye, all of you, shall observe to do all the statutes and the ordinances which I set before you this day. Kabur alu, kabur dintu, kabur hailu, kabur Qedemawi Haile Selassie be Jesus Christos Simbekul Yehun. Amen. Glory to the Word, sound, and power. Glory to the King of Kings and His Christ. This particular reading, this particular portion, which begins off this 47th senbet or Sabbath in our Hebraic, in our holy or keddus, in our calendar, is very, very important. Because first it begins with the word behold. And now the verb in the Hebrew, it's in the singular. Therefore, it's addressing each one of them, and it's addressing each one of us. The blessing and the curse has been set before us. Now, this refers to the blessing and curses which were to be pronounced and which were pronounced on Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal, respectively, on entering the Holy Land. Now, when we understand our identity as Falashas of the West, as the Beta Israel, and we see how we got over here, both prophetically, scripturally, and historically, that fulfills the Beta Israelite prophecy, and we as Ethiopian Hebrews, this particular reading takes on even more significance to us in the present time.